Hey everyone, happy to see you all here. Happy to see that you survived the after party. So thanks for showing up. I really appreciate that. I'm really happy to be back here. Like as Ken mentioned, I was here on stage in 2018 and it feels good to be here. Also because whenever I'm here on stage, I start talking about non-technical stuff, but it's also technical. And you'll see what I mean in a second. Of course, first off, like, yes, this is me. I'm Lorenzo. I'm a senior software engineer at Microsoft. This is actually me. This is how probably some of you may recognize me more for. I'm the guy that does the thing and probably closes your issue. I guess you're welcome or I'm sorry. One of those. I'm sure we can work it out together. We can work it out together. But now, I just want to jump straight into my problem. Yes, I have many problems, of course, we all have. I just want to focus on one today. And because I'm very engineering-like, as most of you are, I'm very bad at explaining myself. So the way I'm going to try to explain my problem is through this recipe for disaster. So this recipe is actually composed by a few bits and pieces, so let's go through them. The first one is the drama. Like, I see that lately, over the last few years, in our community, especially on socials, we see a lot of like clickbait titles and like drama popping up and, you know, clickbaity things where like people are saying that React is dead, React is dying. We got to the point now where there's a blog post that literally has the record of all the times since 2013 React has been deemed dead. So it's very interesting to me seeing so much still happening, but also I'm not that surprised because, you know, social media kind of really encourage this type of thing. And so we see still a lot of it. Like now we have AI kind of like taking over a bit of it, but like I still find it very present. When we combine this with what I would call the roaring silence, then things get a bit more complicated. And what I mean by the roaring silence is the fact that, I don't know if you even know, but technically there is a roadmap document on the GitHub repo of React Native, but the last time it was updated, it was in 2020. It was by me, so probably I was just fixing a typo back then. So the fact that there's this kind of like silence, like I'm a releaser, I should know what's next, and I barely feel like I know. And I can imagine someone that maybe, you know, you're already like great people showing up at the conference interested in React Native and interested in learning, but if you're not disengaged, what's your perception of React Native? And in that sense, the third ingredient even makes things a bit more interesting, right? Because we've seen over time that the Meta team has been publishing these kind of like questions of like, how do you want React Native to be? How are you thinking of React Native? And it's all good and I love them for doing it. But also, if you read the responses to the latest one, they are very political. They don't really commit to anything. And again, if I put myself in the shoes of someone that is not as involved as I am, so I know the things are actually happening. Like, you see this, you see, oh, yeah, there's a bunch of, like, jargon. The project doesn't have a roadmap. So all these things really make me feel uncomfortable. And then there's the chemical X. And the chemical X is no other than Twitter Blue. I could spend an entire hour just ranting about Twitter Blue, so I'll keep it simple. So the thing about it is that because for so long we've been trained to kind of like JavaScript, React, we use Twitter a lot to communicate. Like, I remember a talk last year of a guy basically explaining that the best documentation for React, this was before the new docs, of course, was actually Twitter and like asking questions directly to Dan Abramov. And now we moved into a stage where the blue check mark, anyone can have it, and all of a sudden anyone, even like if they are not like a person with good intents or like someone with followers, they can literally pass, because our brain is still trained to think like, oh, that's actually relevant information. Like, people still perceive that. I literally had a senior PM like write an email being so scared about the future of React Native because they saw a tweet which was complete and utter garbage, but it happened to be from a verified account. It was one of these new verified accounts. So that level of miscommunication can really make things worse. So overall, my recipe for disasters, I think it kind of boils down to these two things. On one end, we have fear, uncertainty, and doubt in the project kind of like going all the way up, and the trust in the project going down. And if you're me and you're an engineer at Microsoft, this situation is kind of weird, because all of a sudden I need to talk with different teams across the company, again, of people that are not coming out to the conferences, are not using React Native, but they want to learn, they want to see if React Native is worth. And I'm like, yeah, that's easy, barely an inconvenience. So for a really long time, I've been trying to understand, how can I fix this? Like, how can I handle this problem? Like, how do I deal with these strong negative emotions? And I started thinking, so they're strong, they're negative, and they're emotions. What can I do? And then it came to me. I can just do what I do best. I can be boring. I can just, have a soft tone of voice and just talk about some of the things. No, of course, I'm not going to speak like that because it's 9 a.m. and we're going to all fall asleep again. But no, so when it comes to React Native, I really feel that what people talk a lot about, it's actually just a little tiny bit on top. And there's so much going on behind the scenes. I wish more people had that awareness. And all the way down, there's the boring bits. And that's what I want to focus on today. And that leads to my first question for you all. Are you excited to be bored? No, bored. Bored, I want you bored. Anyway, yeah, thank you, John. All right, so for my first topic, I want to talk a bit about releases. I know whenever we talk about releases, we try to talk about the latest. Please, always upgrade to latest, use the new features, get all of that. I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about the boring bits. So to do that, I'll actually take a step back in time, back to actually, this was my first ever release. This was back in 2018. And as you can see, you can see that there's basically nothing there. There's nothing, there's just the reference, there's September 2018 revision 4, which also makes, what does that even mean? We had so many problems back then. I think there are a few reasons. One of them being that back then the relationship between Meta and the people from the community handling the releases was not as strong as it is today. So in a way, we were kind of doing things a bit randomly. We were kind of not doing any good communication. We didn't have the expertise, the knowledge, the engineering culture of a strong corporate structure to kind of guide us through that. And also we did very little testing. And not just that, but literally it was me, Mike Grabowski, and I think a third person, and it was just that. It was tribal knowledge. Unless one of us was there to tell the other two how to do things, there was literally no one that could do them. So as you can see, things were kind of bad. I mean, we got through this, but it was kind of bad. Look at things now instead. This is, I know that probably, it's a bit hard to put into words how big this deal is, but we have change logs. We have change log that gets generated through a tool so that we can have them all the time. We have documentation for how to do the releases. This is huge because all of a sudden there's no more bus factor. We can have people learn how to do it through the docs, and we can introduce a rotation. You don't need me, you don't need Mike to be around to do the releases for you. We have discussions. Probably some of you may have requested a commit to be cherry-picked in a certain version in the past. This is huge. And also, I was mentioning earlier, back in the days, it was me, Mike, and a couple more people, but no one from Meta. Look at it now. We have always, in the release crew, we have a crew. We literally have the definition of a release crew with 2 people from the community and 2 engineers from Meta for every new minor. And these people rotate so that we can have the circulation of knowledge, and no one is too big to make the project fail. This is incredible. Just to give you an idea, Node.js has 13 people in their release crew. We have 4. For me, 4 is already a pretty big deal. But sometimes I look at how complex the project is, and I'm like, oh, maybe we should even have more. But we're not even done yet, by the way. We have future ideas, and we're trying to figure things out. We want to introduce more testing. Once we have this end-to-end testing suite figured out, and yes, I I haven't merged that PR yet because it's not finished, but it's fine. We're going to get there. Once we have it there, it's going to be so much better because right now, one of the big things about being in the release crew is that you do a lot of testing to help ensure that at least the base cases are all covered and we don't, release broken stuff. And all these more stable releases with less human errors are really, really good reasons to be excited about this. And I was almost surprised to see it, and probably it's a bit small there, but if you go on the React Native versioning website where we benchmark and keep track of like the new versions and like how many NPM downloads each version has, like 71, the current latest, this week has surpassed the 50% mark in the total NPM downloads. This is incredible. Like, sorry, I know you want to clap in. Yeah, it's good. Thank you, guys. I've been doing releases for almost 5 years. I've never seen one single version being this prominent. And I really hope that things will keep evolving. Also because we've seen 70 reach 40%. And then when 71 was out, 70 very quickly came down and 71 grew very quickly. So this means that from 70 to 71, the process of upgrading was so much smoother. And I really hope we keep iterating on that and keep making things even more better in a way. And yes, I know probably some of you in the audience are like, oh, release processes, documentation, this is boring. Don't worry, we can do even better. We can be more boring. We can be even more convoluted. Trust me, we can get there. So let's talk about my baby, the Monorepo work. So for those of you who don't know, probably when you think of React Native, you probably think of something like a folder, right? You go on GitHub, you see React Native as the repository, you're like, oh yeah, that's where the React Native code is. No, React Native is both the React Native NPM module and also Monorepo with like 20 other packages. And some of you may already notice, like, how does that even work? Good question, it doesn't. Like, what we do is that whenever we cut a release branch, like what we did in the past, luckily, spoiler, things are better, literally, we had some scripts ripping out the Monorepo part so that we could have the code there working for the Node module of React Native. So that's already not great. And then on top of that, if you go through those packages, literally, they weren't on a consistent versioning. They weren't on a consistent naming. Some of them were on like 3.0. Like, people are complaining that we're not at 1.0 in React Native. How can we have something at 3.0? And how do you get that thing to work with any given version of React Native? It's madness. And I actually found footage of us trying to manually do some of these side packages releases. It went pretty well all of the time. It was barely a problem. But yeah, so how do we work it out? Actually, it was relatively intuitive. We just took React Native and we put it in the packages. This might sound trivial, and as you can see here, we also managed to rename some of the packages. We've reintroduced a consistent versioning, and by having everything in the same place in a consistent manner, it means that we can finally rely on some tooling for the full automation. We have full automation for all the release of all the packages, and oh my God, having everything even under the same namespace, like these things are huge, and it may sound like, oh yeah, just need to move a folder. But it's much more complicated than that. Like, it took us almost a year from the RFC to see this commit finally get merged. And this was only possible because of an engineer from Meta called Razlan that is based in London, so he's not here, but I really want to give him a round of applause because moving this stuff, oh my God, it was so much work. Like, also because React Native and the way React Native is managed implies that there's the code on the meta side and there's the GitHub repo. So moving such a big amount of files was, it was so much work. And I'm so happy that we are able to say that 72 will be the first version to actually be in this new configuration. So probably for you, it will be completely transparent. And if it is, it's perfect because it means that we've done our job well. And overall, why is it good? I was just saying, so we have more control, we can introduce more automation. It gets easier to contribute. Like, all of a sudden, you don't need to, okay, here's the repo, here's the list of all the custom things that you need to know if you want to do even your first ever contribution, and good luck finding the right folder. Now things are easier, and we can also potentially start thinking about further granularity. Okay, now we have a system in place, we have automation. Why does React Native need to be so massive? You know, there's a lot of opportunities that open up here. So basically, both these things are, yes, they're boring. They're not like fancy new features that you're going to have in your app, but they really speak about a very exciting futures where things will keep getting better. And now I want to open like small parentheses. So some of you may be thinking that, like, how is this all happening? Like, this seems like pretty huge news. How can he kind of like fly under the radar this way? And the answer is actually relatively simple again. Like, it's a concert of things. As you may know, like in the React Native ecosystem, there's a series of key companies. There's Meta, there are partner companies, and all of these people have multiple ways of communicating with each other. We have the discussion and proposal repository. That's usually like a pretty good place to go and have a look of like, I want to take a peek in what the future of React Native might look like. The communication there is increasing, is improving. More and more RFCs are being open. So, and also because it's an open source repository, you can go there, add your comments if you want. Like, you can add your perspective to these conversations because they're out in the open. And even for smaller working groups, like for example, us at Microsoft have driven what was called the Bundle Working Group for almost a year or a bit more, which was a series of meetings between engineers from Microsoft, engineers from Meta, from the Metro team, and a few other key companies to see how we can make Metro more reliable for everyone. And again, all the agenda notes are all in an open source repository. So these communications have been, as much as we can, out in the open. And hopefully, at this point, maybe one or two of you are wondering, how can I get involved? What should I do if I have an idea, if there's a way I can see React Native be better, and how can I work towards that? Sadly, there's no like one simple answer for this. There's no simple silver bullet. I have a personal recommendation. So based on my experience so far, the first thing you have to do is have a really like properly well thought through proposal. You really want to think it through, make it solid. You want to show it to some people, you want to get some feedback, you want to add some graphs, you really want to make sure that whoever comes to your document and reads it, understands what you are trying to do, and understands how to get there. Once you have that first round of feedback with peers, with people you trust, at that point you want to establish a collaboration with Meta. Meta is, of course, a key element in making anything happen in React Native. And for some of you, maybe in probably like middle to bigger size companies, like if you go to your leadership and say, hey, I have this idea and I'm going to create a collaboration with Meta, probably your leadership will go all starry eyes. So, you know, it's also important to keep in mind because once you have the RFC open, which is the very next step in the discussion and proposal repo, you really need to be able to execute on the plan and co-own it. Like, you cannot expect us, Meta, to, oh, this is a really good idea, let me go and spend a year trying to make it work. Like, you need to put in the work, you need to help, you need to be part of it. Like, it's not by chance that the two examples that I showed you earlier, in a way, are made by Microsoft, because I worked directly on both of them. In a way, you really have ownership of the proposal you can get. You can really, in a way, own and shape React Native. And this is so powerful. But talking about made at Microsoft, it's time for the shameless plug. So, of course, at Microsoft, we don't only do this kind of like collaboration. We also own a few projects. We try to, you know, make things better for everyone. You know, I think our mission is literally empower everyone to do their best job, I hope. It's not like I'm being recorded, so it's fine. But yeah, if you want to learn more, actually, we have that blog. We have an official Twitter account, and soon we'll actually have also on Reddit. But like, we do a lot of things, not just like these more meta collaborations, also like more real code. So, and this was the parenthesis. Let's close this off. Let's actually close the entire talk off. Let's review a bit the key ideas that I really hope I passed through to you and you can take with you home. So the first 12 is like don't worry about the drama. It's not just drama going on. There's a lot under the surface. Some of these conversations are really big, are really important, and things will keep things will keep getting better because key companies are heavily, heavily invested in the success of React Native. And on the flip side, for you, like Meta, if you have an idea, Meta will listen. They may even like do portions of the work where you're stuck, when you're blocked, when it's something out of your control. Of course, you need to know where to look. You need to ask. You need to have a relationship with these other people and interact and be ready to put in the work. Also, as you may have realized by this point, I'm a really passionate person, and when I like something, I really like hyperfixate. And when it came to open source, I started like doing a lot of open source and trying to figure things out. I also started learning a lot about the history of open source, like how different technology spaces and different maintainers in different projects handle things. And I think, based on what I've seen so far of React Native in my experience throughout these years, I feel confident in saying that React Native is one of the safest bets in the entire open source system. I'm not even joking. Like, if you look at the size of this project, if you look at the fact that it's 8 years old, React is 10 years old, and you think about the fact that we're still able to do these massive changes, the project is flexible enough to improve, to not be strictly fixed on something, but like really be able to evolve and keep up. I think it's very unheard of in the open source space, especially with so many key companies involved like Microsoft and Meta. Anyway, this was me. I really hope that this brief talk helped you get a bit of trust in the project back. I really appreciate you all being here, and I hope I'll see you soon. Take care.